Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm going to split my time with the Chief Opposition Whip, who is my favorite Chief Opposition Whip. But I want to start by, first of all, those who are suffering, the parents, brothers, sisters, families involved. Our hearts are with you, and I want those watching to know that there is a better way. There is carnage out there. Bodies in the streets, skin punctured by weapons, their veins full with dangerous chemicals, surrounding them debris and unimaginable scenes of human suffering. We've seen it across the country. And in no place is it more prevalent than in British Columbia today. This isn't a depiction of some horror movie. It's a depiction of what's happening in our streets. And it's not because of a violent scene curated by an award-winning director or special effects. This is what's really happening. And it would make you think that you were watching the worst thing that you could possibly see on TV. It's our own government giving away free drugs. Frankly, investing in street-level palliative care, that's what it looks like. You don't have to look much further than the debate that we're having today to know how badly the Liberals and the NDP have strayed from consensus on this topic here in Canada. After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, after 9 years of the drugs, the disorder, the chaos, the crime, members of Parliament here in this place are actively defending and promoting the legalization of hard drugs, like crack, like heroin, like meth, in hospitals, in parks, and on buses. And it is clear that this is no longer your mother's Liberal Party. It is an extremist view of this issue and so many other issues. And contrary to everything that we see every day in our communities, the people lying face down on the sidewalk, the endless tent cities, the needles littering playgrounds and public transit, these Liberal NDP MPs continue to press on with an ideological purity, even as evidence advocates, their own party members, moms and dads, and those in the community tell them that their extremist experiment has failed. And it is not hard to find evidence why. It is everywhere. Beyond the scenes that we witness in parks, in our communities, and in our own neighborhoods, the facts and the testimony are everywhere. After this government supported Premier Eby's socialist experiment and plot to legalize the consumption of hard drugs like heroin in public places, overdose deaths are at 380%. Actually, they went up 380%. That's 6 people every day in one province. It's gotten so out of line in hospitals that they were soon mandated to allow drug use, even next to cancer patients, newborn babies. Just picture your grandmother lying in bed next to a guy in a room, well, next to another room where a guy is smoking meth. That's where we're at. Not to mention the BC crime rates have gone up 7 out of 8 years that this Prime Minister has been in power. The problem with so-called safe supply is not just a British Columbia problem, it's an everywhere problem. And thanks to this government flooding the streets with opioids, powerful and dangerous drugs that used to cost $50 a pill are now sold for less than $2 on street corners. Those who are struggling with addiction can sell their fentanyl prescription minutes after getting it, and then use the money to buy even harder and more potent drugs. And as a result, more and more people are getting sucked into the violent cycle of addiction. People as young as 14 years old are dying from overdoses because they were entrapped into trying these drugs by friends, by neighbors, and even strangers that they've met on the internet. Drugs that were easy to get, easy to sell, and easy to get hooked on. And it's something that the minister actually said was not happening. So we can see that these radical Liberal NDP MPs are promoting, what they're promoting is not safe supply. It's unsafe supply. It's unsafe for those who use drugs because instead of treatment, they get even more drugs to keep them from using for a life, or to keep them using for a lifetime, all while it takes hundreds of days to find a detox bed in almost any city. It's unsafe for individuals recovering from the use of drugs as relapses and temptations become more common thanks to the flood of fentanyl in our streets. And it's unsafe for communities at large as kids dodge needles on playgrounds and nurses stop breastfeeding for the fear of contaminating their babies after a full day of treating those who use drugs openly in their hospitals. And even in the face of all of this, the Liberals and the NDP want to continue pushing forward and defending their failed record literally to death. That's not just a hallmark of this government that ignores and labels everyone it disagrees with while telling Canadians that left is right and up is down. It's emblematic of a government that fundamentally minimizes the value and the dignity possessed by every single human being, somebody who wants to get better. A government that offers medical assistance in dying to veterans who served our nation. A government who separated Canadians into categories, calling them misogynists, into categories that said vaccinated and unvaccinated, and yes, a government that would rather pump pills instead of helping people get better. On this side of the House, we believe that every human has the value, that everybody with support and care and compassion and can turn their life around. We never hear that conversation in this House. We never hear about the ability for somebody to get better. That's why we oppose this misguided plan to legalize free drugs. That's why a Conservative Minister of Health would invest in treatment and not crack, into recovery and not heroin. But before a common-sense Conservative government, there is an even more pressing problem. The Liberals and the NDP just don't want to defend their record on drugs. They want to expand it, because if they didn't, they would have said that. They still haven't rejected requests from cities like Montreal and Toronto to do exactly what was done in BC, with exactly the same consequences. The minister says that the application is dormant, and I suspect that it's dormant until exactly after the next election. And as a Toronto area MP, I know the problems that we have with legal drugs. I know how bad they are. And just think about what making them legal would do. Open drug use and more violence on the TTC. More human suffering right out in the open, right out on our streets, in our parks, in our hospitals, on our buses, on our subways. More crime, more chaos, more drugs, more disorder in our neighborhoods that used to feel safe. This is all propagated by the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions from Toronto, who's selling out her own constituents, who want to go to work, who want to raise a family, who want to just live in peace. A minister who won't protect her constituents from the reckless drug use. The same minister that has failed to protect the very people that brought her here. It is not the first time. And even in this crazy world, I thought more people would have the guts and the brains to look around at what's happening, to look around at what's going on in BC and everywhere else, and to say no to these irrational free drug schemes that have proven not to work. 2,500 people in BC, 6 people a day. There's even more evidence after 9 years of this Liberal NDP coalition. Madam Speaker, they've absolutely lost their minds on this. And what's worse is if you asked 10 years ago to accuse the Prime Minister of legalizing the smoking of crack in a hospital room, I would call you crazy. I would say he would never do that. And here we are today, where it was legal up until their request, and up until it took them 11 days to come back on that request, and they still haven't ruled it out for other cities. I would call him insane. That's what I would have called him. I would call that experiment insane. And yet it's true today. And what's more insane is if you are going to call it for what it is, the most insane policy that this government has ever put forward, they will call you insane for saying that. That's gaslighting to the nth degree. I look forward to a day where the Minister of Mental Health, a member from York Centre, is no longer allowed to give away free drugs. The day where people in their darkest moments can get the help that they need, treatments, to bring home their loved ones drug-free. And a day where communities, where kids, where neighborhoods are fully protected from this scourge. Their views are extreme. And don't let anybody ever tell you or anybody who's watching that this is not anything but extreme. They have become an extremist party with extremist policies.